Chapter 1. The Rain and the Refuge. November in Portland had a way of shrinking the day. By 3 in the afternoon, the light already felt borrowed, thin and gray, as if dusk were impatiently waiting its turn. The air clung to everything, cold, wet, and heavy with the promise of rain. Elena walked quickly down the street, her heels striking the pavement with purpose. Her trench coat was sleek, expensive, and already damp at the edges. She had just come from a client meeting that left her feeling hollowed out rather than accomplished, the kind where words like efficiency and scalability were thrown around as if they meant the same thing as satisfaction. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She checked it without stopping. Mom's call, 7 p.m. Elena sighed, not in frustration exactly, but in resignation. Some things, like work deadlines and family expectations, seemed permanently scheduled into her life, immovable as concrete. The rain began suddenly, hard and unannounced. One moment the sky was threatening, the next it was pouring. People scattered, umbrellas bloomed open like dark flowers. Elena ducked beneath the nearest awning, breath quickened by the cold. She looked up. A bookstore window glowed softly in front of her, spilling golden light onto the wet sidewalk. The sign above the door read, "The Last Chapter." In the display window, a careful stack of books rested beside a handwritten note taped to the glass. "Find your next escape." For a moment, she simply stood there, listening to the rain hammer against the street. Then, almost without thinking, she reached for the door and stepped inside. A bell chimed gently behind her. Chapter 2. The Quiet World. The sound of rain vanished as the door closed. Inside, the air was warm and still. Jazz played somewhere in the background, low and unhurried, as if it had nowhere else to be. The scent of old paper mingled with sandalwood and something faintly bitter, coffee or tea. Books surrounded her. They filled polished oak shelves that stretched toward the ceiling, spilled across tables, and tucked themselves into small corners where armchairs waited patiently. It felt less like a store and more like a sanctuary built for people who needed to slow down. Behind the counter stood Leo. He was repairing the spine of a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, his hands steady and careful. When he looked up, their eyes met briefly. He smiled, not the polite smile of a salesman, but something quieter and more genuine, and gave a small nod before returning to his work. He didn't ask if she needed help. Elena noticed that immediately. Used to open offices filled with keyboards, notifications, and constant interruption, the silence unsettled her at first. Then, slowly, it began to calm her. She wandered between the shelves, running her fingers along book spines. She stopped at a display of bestsellers and picked up a glossy thriller. After flipping through a few pages, she frowned and set it back down. The choice felt performative, like she was selecting a version of herself she no longer believed in. From the counter, Leo watched her hesitation. After a few minutes, he approached, careful to leave space between them. "First time escaping here?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Elena blinked, then smiled faintly. "Is it that obvious?" "A little," he said. "Welcome." She shifted her weight. "I haven't read a novel for fun in years," I admitted. "I'm not even sure where to start." Leo studied her for a moment, not critically, but with curiosity. "What did you love before you had to stop?" The question caught her off guard. She thought about it. "Stories about journeys," she said slowly, "and clever dialogue." Leo's face brightened. "I might have a prescription." Chapter 3. The Guided Tour. Instead of leading her toward the bestseller wall, Leo turned down a narrower aisle, one she hadn't noticed before. A small handwritten sign hung above it. Travels, Real and Imagined. He reached for a pristine paperback and handed it to her. The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. For the journey into the fantastic, he said. Then he moved to another shelf, scanning the titles before pulling out a slightly weathered book. The Rosie Project by Graham Simsian. And for clever dialogue, he added, it's also a love story, one that starts with a flowchart. Elena laughed, a real surprised sound that echoed softly between the shelves. I think I trust you, she said. As she took the books, their fingers brushed. A small static shock jumped between them. They both pulled back at the same time, laughing nervously. Outside, the rain drummed steadily against the windows. Would you like some tea? Leo asked. The storm doesn't seem eager to leave. She nodded. They sat across from each other at a small wooden table near the window. Steam curled from their mugs as they talked, about her work with algorithms and systems, about his belief that organizing books was like creating a playlist for the soul. She learned he painted the landscape bookmarks sold at the counter. He learned she secretly loved terrible 80s romance movies. Time slipped. Her phone stayed silent in her pocket. Chapter 4. The Cliffhanger and the Courage. The rain eventually softened into a drizzle. Reality crept back in. Elena stood at the counter with her books while Leo rang them up. He hesitated, then opened The Starless Sea and wrote something inside the cover with a fountain pen. He closed it quickly and handed it to her. The first chapter is on me, he said, uncertainty flickering across his face. Let me know if the journey is any good. Outside, under a clearing sky, Elena opened the book. In elegant script, he had written, Every story needs a first line. Ours could be, She walked in from the rain, and he forgot how to be a stranger. If you'd like to write the next one, my number is below. She looked back at the bookstore window. Leo was there, watching. Elena smiled, nodded once, and held the book close to her chest as she stepped into the silver-lit street, already imagining the message she would send. Chapter 5. The First Message. Elena didn't text him right away. She walked 3 blocks before realizing she had slowed to a near stop, the city around her blurred by the steady rhythm of her thoughts. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, stretching into long silver lines. Cars passed, their tires hissing softly against the road. She held the starless sea against her chest like something fragile. At the next intersection, she finally stopped. The crosswalk signal blinked red. She pulled the book from her coat and opened it again, rereading the words as if they might change. They didn't. She smiled. Her phone was already in her hand before she consciously decided to take it out. Unknown number. This is Elena. I'm standing under a streetlight 3 blocks away and smiling at a book like a ridiculous person. I think that means the journey is off to a good start. The message sat there for a moment. Then, Leo. That might be my favorite review yet. She laughed softly, alone on the corner. They exchanged a few more messages, unhurried, thoughtful. No emojis, no pressure. When they finally paused, it felt natural, not unfinished. Elena looked up at the sky. The clouds were thinning, giving way to a pale, uncertain moon. For the first time in a long while, she felt unplanned happiness. Chapter 6. The Pages Between Days. They didn't rush. Their messages came in waves, sometimes long conversations, sometimes just a single line sent late at night. Leo would ask where she was in the book. Elena would send him a sentence she liked, or a thought she hadn't realized she was having until she typed it out. She read on the train, on her couch, once during her lunch break with noise-canceling headphones blocking out the office. Reading stopped feeling like effort. At work, she noticed small shifts in herself. She listened more. She interrupted less. She caught herself thinking in metaphors again, something she hadn't done since college. One evening, her phone buzzed as she stood in line at a grocery store. Leo. There's a double feature at the old theater on Hawthorne this Saturday, When Harry Met Sally and something far less defensible. Would you like to argue about it with me? She didn't hesitate. Elena. Only if you promise to defend your opinions badly. Leo. I excel at that.
Chapter 7. When Harry Met Sally. The theater smelled like popcorn and history. Its red velvet seats were worn smooth by decades of moviegoers. The screen flickered slightly, imperfect and charming. Elena arrived early, nervous in a way that felt unfamiliar. Leo waved when he saw her. He stood, suddenly unsure of where to put his hands. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she replied. They bought popcorn. Their shoulders brushed in the narrow aisle. During the movie, they whispered arguments about dialogue and fate and whether people could really be just friends. At one point, their hands reached for popcorn at the same time. Neither moved away. Elena realized she wasn't thinking about what came next. She was simply there. Chapter 8. Margins. Weeks passed, then months. Elena became a regular at the last chapter. Sometimes she bought books, sometimes she just sat and read while Leo worked nearby. They learned each other's silences, learned when to speak and when not to. One afternoon, she noticed a book on the counter with notes written in the margins. "Do you ever write in them?" she asked. "All the time," Leo said. "It feels like a conversation." She thought about that. That night, she wrote in the margins of the starless sea for the first time. Not analysis, just questions. Chapter 9. The Call. At 7 p.m., her phone rang. Mom. Elena answered. For once, she didn't rush the conversation. She listened. She spoke honestly. When she hung up, she felt lighter. She looked around the bookstore. Leo was watching her, curious. "Everything okay?" he asked. She smiled. "Yeah," she said. "I think I'm finally reading my own life again." Leo smiled back. And outside, the rain began again, soft this time, patient, as if it knew it was welcome.